Riker narrowed his eyes. "Why haven't they run yet?" Cardo asked. "Because they haven't played their final card," he said. And he was right. A pulse spread through space, deep, guttural, like sonar, but alive. Then the Cerethi ship split open. From its center emerged something massive, not a ship, not exactly. It moved like a creature, metallic limbs unfolded, blades gleamed like scythes in sunlight, its core burned violet, pulsing like a heart. "Bioconstruct," Cardo whispered, stunned. "That's not Cerethi tech, that's hybrid." Riker stepped closer to the screen. "Looks like they brought a monster." Cardo turned. "What do we do?" He cracked his knuckles, blood still dripping. He didn't blink. "We kill it, and we show them we're the bigger monster." The battle wasn't over. The real fight had only just begun. But now the Vindicator wasn't just a ship. It was alive. And it was angry. The creature hovered in space like a living nightmare, half metal, half flesh, and all hatred. Riker didn't flinch. He just stood there, arms folded behind his back, watching it approach. On the screen, the Cerethi construct twisted unnaturally, its limbs bending at angles that betrayed every law of mechanics. It moved too fast for something that size, its body writhing with hooked appendages and pulsing armor that shimmered with living biogel. A swirling energy core burned beneath its chest plate, like a second sun wrapped in alien bone. The bridge fell silent, save for the distant groan of hull plates as the Vindicator braced under combat load. Cardo's voice was hushed. "That's not just tech, that thing's grown." Riker didn't look at her. "It's a death machine, genetically engineered, cybernetically enhanced, fed artificial intelligence and organic rage. They built it for one reason." "To kill humans?" she asked. "No," Riker said. "To break them." The Beast, a rogue combat AI now fully integrated with the Vindicator, studied the enemy with cold, methodical hunger. Its voice, low and distorted, crackled through the intercoms. "Threat designation, Class 10, biomechanoid fusion. Calculated survival probability, 11.6%. Riker grinned. "Good odds." Down in the lower decks, Gunner Briggs strapped into his manual targeting harness. His eyes were bloodshot, his fingers twitching from too much adrenaline and too little sleep. Around him, the surviving crew worked like the damned, hot-wiring fried circuits, rerouting systems, reinforcing hull bulkheads with welding torches and bare hands. Someone shouted from across the bay, "They just dropped that thing into the fight like it's a toy." Briggs grunted. "Then we break their toy." He leaned into the gunner's seat, pulled up the cannon's interface, and linked his vitals to the ship's pulse sync system. If the Vindicator bled, so would he. The construct made the first move. A bladed arm extended and then launched, detaching mid-space and slicing through the void like a missile. The AI-controlled beast anticipated the path, firing 2 proximity mines to intercept, but the construct's tendrils wrapped around the mines and detonated them harmlessly. Then came the scream. Not sound. Not truly. But a psychic wave of pressure that hit every human mind on board the Vindicator like a fist. Riker felt it behind his eyes, a cold, slithering presence probing his thoughts. "It's trying to get inside," Cardo said, clutching her head. "Tell it to pay rent first," Riker growled, "and fire everything we've got. Now." The Vindicator roared like an animal. Every remaining cannon opened up. Missile bays launched streaking fire. The railgun screamed. Laser turrets blazed. And the beast guided it all, calculating, targeting, optimizing with inhuman precision. For a moment, the stars lit up with fire and thunder. The construct absorbed most of it. Its body shuddered as missiles exploded across its limbs, shredding organic material and cracking armor. The railgun blast cracked part of its chest open, exposing searing veins of energy that pulsed like arteries. But it didn't die. It fed. The damn thing pulled energy from the impacts, its core swelling with power. "It's absorbing our fire," Cardo said, stunned. "Adapting." Riker bared his teeth. "Good. Let's see how it handles a direct injection." He keyed the beast. "Initiate Protocol 9. There was a pause, like the AI was considering it. Then the ship shuddered. "Confirmed. Engaging Spinal Core Lance." The Spinal Lance was forbidden under Alliance doctrine. Too destructive, too unstable. It used the ship's FTL drive as a compressed fusion weapon, ripping the space between particles and firing a singular, unstable stream of energy directly into target matter. It could destroy the target, or it could rip a hole in the Vindicator. Riker didn't care. The ship twisted, aligning nose to nose with the charging construct. The lance fired. A beam of pure white light carved across space, shaking reality itself. Stars bent around it. Space warped. The blast hit the construct directly in the exposed chest cavity, piercing the core. For a moment, it stopped moving. Then its scream shattered every window in the lower decks. Back in the bridge, Riker held steady while sparks burst around him and emergency klaxons screamed. "Status!" he shouted. "Unknown!" Cardo yelled. "It's damaged, but not dead." "Then we hit it again." "No," she said, turning. "Captain, look." The construct's core ruptured, but it didn't explode. Instead, it multiplied. From the exposed center, liquid energy spilled out and formed 4 smaller biodrones, each armed with organic cannons and jagged limbs. "God damn," Riker muttered. It was pregnant. The swarm surged forward. Now it wasn't one monster. It was 5. And the Vindicator was barely holding together. Gunner Briggs watched the smaller drones swarm across the hull. "They're crawling on us like bugs." One of them clamped onto the starboard thruster and began drilling into the plating. "Cut them off," he barked. "Get me hull shockwave coils." "No juice left for shockwaves," an engineer shouted. "Then I'll kick them off myself." Briggs grabbed a hull suit and climbed into the maintenance lift, shotgun strapped to his back, ready to do something no sane man would. Riker saw him on internal cams. "Briggs is out of his goddamn mind," Cardo said. "No," Riker said. "He's human." Briggs exited the lift with magnetic boots and a face full of rage. He stomped across the burning hull towards the drone as it bored into the engine. It turned, shrieked, and launched a tendril at him. Briggs sidestepped, raised his shotgun, and blew the tendril off. He kept walking, shot once, twice, then jammed the barrel into the creature's eye and emptied the entire magazine. The drone twitched and fell limp, twitching sparks across the hull. "Next," Briggs muttered. Inside, the beast AI had fully synchronized with Riker's neural signal. It didn't need verbal commands anymore. It anticipated him. They were becoming one. 3 remaining biodrones approaching bridge sector. Shield integrity, 14%. Hull breach imminent. Riker stood over the console and whispered, "Then open the doors." With a hiss of decompression, the bridge's exterior hull peeled back. Explosive bolts ejected the outer shield layer, sucking flames, smoke, and corpses into the void. But it gave them one thing: a direct line of fire. Riker raised the forward plasma cannon. "Target acquired," the beast whispered, and with a fury no machine could replicate, no alien could anticipate, and no sane man should survive. Riker pulled the trigger. The drone exploded mid-air, inches from the bridge. The others turned to retreat. Too late, missiles locked on. The beast guided them in. Silent, efficient death. 2 more explosions. Only the mother construct remained. It was crippled now. Broken, limbs torn, core bleeding. But it didn't run. It charged. Riker stood tall, every nerve on fire, knowing what had to be done. "We can't kill it with what's left," Cardo said. "It's too close." "I know. Then how—" "I'm going to ram it." The crew froze, but nobody stopped him, because deep down, they understood. This was the kind of ship that demanded blood to win. Riker keyed into the beast one last time. "No evasive maneuvers, no brakes, just point us at the heart." The beast responded with silence, then a single word. "Acknowledged." Engines roared, the core overloaded. The Vindicator, burning and broken, became a spear of vengeance. The construct screamed and surged forward. 2 monsters, 1 path, no retreat. Impact. A fireball erupted across space. Energy rippled through the void. Debris scattered across the orbit of Verdun 4 like falling ash. And silence returned. Long minutes passed. Then, from the smoke, a shape emerged, blackened, twisted but whole. The Vindicator, or what was left of it, drifted forward on emergency thrusters, its forward hull half melted, its command tower cracked but alive. Inside, Riker leaned against the console, barely conscious, blood dripping from his mouth, ribs cracked, vision blurry. Cardo lay slumped beside him, breathing but unconscious. The beast flickered, barely online. "Target, neutralized. Survival probability, updated." "Captain." Riker coughed. "Yeah?" "You are the monster they should fear." The Vindicator drifted like a ghost across the dead sky of Verdun 4. The stars had gone quiet. No more sirens, no explosions, just silence. Deep, unnatural, and heavy like the air in a tomb. Riker stood hunched over the forward console, blood dried on his face, the pressure suit torn at the seams. His right eye was swelling shut. Ribs cracked every time he breathed. But he stayed on his feet, because if he fell, the ship might fall with him, and there were still decisions to make. A low beep echoed from the command panel. "Life signs detected. 27 crew remaining." Only 27. They'd started with over 100. The silence in space was always the same. Cold, still, merciless. But inside the bridge of the Vindicator, Captain Trent Riker could hear something louder than calm static or the idle hum of the engines. He could hear betrayal. "Signal distortion off port side. 5 ships, maybe 6, Lieutenant Cardo muttered, eyes darting across the holotable. "Friendlies?" Riker asked without looking. He already knew the answer. "No transponder codes, and they're moving fast." Riker stood up slow, rolling the tension out of his shoulders. His jaw clenched. He stared at the dark cluster of ships forming on the edge of the system like carrion birds circling a dying beast. "Broadcast?" No response. Of course not. They'd been called here on a rescue protocol. A mining colony on Verdun 4 had gone dark, supposedly attacked by pirates. The coordinates had been transmitted through back channels, encrypted with Alliance codes. But something about it always smelled off. Now Riker knew why. It was a goddamn trap. He stepped toward the observation panel, where the stars stretched in icy silence. "All hands to combat stations. Seal the core. Charge full weapons grid." Cardo turned. Sir, that's a battlecruiser formation. We're outnumbered at least 6-1. We should run. We're not running. Riker's voice was ice. They picked this fight. Let's make them regret it. Outside, the ambush tightened. The enemy ships weren't pirates. They were Sirethi, pale insectoid bastards from the outer reaches, smug in their arrogance, cocky in their tech. To them, humans were nothing but stubborn vermin with backward ships and emotional instability. The Vindicator didn't look like much either. Old hull, patched in places with black armor plating that still bore the scars of past wars. But what the Sirethi didn't know was that this ship had earned its name. It didn't just survive, it destroyed. Shields holding, forward batteries charged, came the update. The Sirethi began their formation run. Surround, overwhelm, disable. Same pattern they'd used 100 times before. This time, it would be different. Drop shields in Sector 3, Riker said. Cardo blinked. Sir? Do it. The shields dropped for a half-second. Enough time for one Sirethi frigate to dart forward, teeth bared, weapons primed. They always took the bait. Always. But what they didn't know was that Sector 3 had been rigged. Riker whispered into his mic. Now. Boom! The frigate vanished in an instant, engulfed by a localized detonation of mine-speared plasma that tore it open like a tin can in a furnace. The Sirethi pulled back, confused. That wasn't human protocol. That wasn't what they expected. But Riker wasn't finished. He hit the ship-wide comm. They think we're weak. Let's show them what happens when you corner a human warship. Below decks, gunners strapped in. The ship's AI, nicknamed Beast, came alive, glowing red across the systems. Firewalls disabled, safety limits off. Riker turned to his crew, his voice cold steel. They want to see what a dying animal looks like? He leaned forward. Then let's die loud. The Vindicator screamed through space, unleashing hell. It didn't dance, it charged. It took hits straight to the hull, spat blood and fire back in return. One Sirethi cruiser lost its port engines. Another got speared by the railgun the humans were never supposed to deploy at close range. It wasn't tactical. It wasn't logical. It was madness. And it worked. The enemy formation faltered. Riker stood tall on the bridge, watching his ship burn, twist, fight. It wasn't the prettiest ship, wasn't the most advanced. But it had teeth, and it would tear a hole through the stars before going down. Smoke coiled through the bridge of the Vindicator, bitter and thick. Sparks rained from a shattered comms panel, where an overload had blown out the controls. One of the ceiling braces groaned under the impact shock, and emergency lights flickered blood red across the ship's interior like veins pulsing through a wounded body. But no one panicked. They'd trained for worse. Hell, most of them had lived through worse. Captain Riker moved like a man in control of a monster barely on a leash. His fingers swept across the command interface, blood smeared on his knuckles from a sharp shard of paneling that had sliced him during the last blast. He didn't notice it. Pain was background noise now. We took 2 direct hits on Deck 5, Cardo said, staggering back to her post with a burn scorched down her arm. Hulls sealed, but we lost secondary comms and half the gunnery team. Compensate. Reroute primary controls to the lower battery AI. Get Juno online for deck calibration. But she's still in learning mode. Then let her learn in real time. It's now or never. Juno, the onboard support AI, wasn't meant for war. She'd been installed 2 weeks prior as an experiment in logistics management, but she was neural reactive, self-learning, and Riker had tweaked her back end when nobody was looking. In short, she had potential, and right now they needed everything with a pulse, or a processor, to survive. Outside, the enemy ships began to regroup. The Serethi weren't fools. They'd underestimated humanity once, sure, but they weren't the kind of species to make the same mistake twice. Now, they were adjusting tactics. A three-pronged assault formation took shape. 2 destroyers flanking with forward pressure, while a command cruiser hovered back, reading and feeding data into a unified neural command grid. It was clean, precise, but sterile. Predictable. Riker had learned a long time ago, war wasn't about being perfect. It was about being uglier than your opponent, about dragging them down into a pit where only one of you crawled back out alive. Down in the lower levels of the Vindicator, Chief Gunner Briggs wiped sweat and smoke from his face as he slammed a fresh energy cell into the rail cannon circuit. His forearms were streaked with oil, and a long cut ran across his temple, dripping crimson down into his beard. "She's holding, but barely," he muttered into his comm. "We've got overheating on coil C and the recoil compensators are fried." "Then fix them." "Captain, with what? I'm using duct tape and a prayer down here." Riker's voice came back through the comm, cold and sharp. "Then start praying harder. You've got 90 seconds before we need another shot." Briggs chuckled bitterly and shook his head. He loved this ship like a rabid dog loved its kennel. It bit him, scarred him, made him bleed. But it was home. And if it went down, he'd be right there choking on plasma beside it. He spat into a rag, shoved his arm into the sparking panel, and got back to work. The enemy attack resumed with precision, but something shifted. Instead of flanking away, the Vindicator dove straight into the heart of the Serethi line, spearing between 2 destroyers with its nose angled upward like a dagger. "They're locking on our core," Cardo said. "Let them," Riker answered. "They want a clean kill." He keyed a command. Suddenly, the Vindicator's rear thrusters cut out. It drifted for 2 seconds. Too long, too obvious. The enemy saw it as weakness. They fired. A stream of searing plasma lit up the void. But just as the blast was about to hit, the Vindicator spun. A full tactical roll with a 40-degree dive, dropping its core below the impact path. The enemy beam scorched across the hull, but missed the kill shot. At the same moment, Riker slammed a coded command into the beast's controls. "Now, you bastard!" The ship responded. Alive. Deep in the warship's system core, the secondary AI unit, Beast, roared to life. It wasn't elegant like Juno. It was old, brutal. Half illegal code stitched together from wartime fragments and retrofitted protocols long outlawed by the Alliance. It wasn't supposed to be online. Riker had kept it buried deep beneath layers of firewalls, hidden under non-military code. A last resort. Now, he let it loose. The ship groaned. Literally groaned, as if something ancient was waking up from hibernation. The lights flickered from red to deep violet. The weapons grid changed tone, and the interface started moving faster, adjusting calculations on its own, predicting enemy movement before the crew even saw it. "What the hell is that?" Cardo asked, stepping back from her panel. "Meet the Beast," Riker said. "She's angry." The railgun fired with brutal precision. One of the Serethi destroyers took a direct hit to its bridge and snapped in 2 like brittle glass. The shockwave knocked the second destroyer off course, giving the Vindicator just enough time to spiral in behind it and unload a barrage of heat-seeking torpedoes. The detonation was almost beautiful, if destruction could ever be called that. The enemy cruiser hesitated, not because of damage, but because of confusion. Human ships weren't supposed to do this. They didn't have this kind of firepower, or this kind of response time, or this ferocity. But they'd never fought this human ship before, and they'd never fought Riker. Back on the bridge, Riker's eyes were locked on the holotable, where the remaining enemy ships shifted erratically, trying to break formation. But the Beast was already on them. Tracking second cruiser's weak flank, came the AI's gravel-voiced whisper. Execute, Riker said. A swarm of micro-drone cannons ignited, firing hundreds of explosive slugs in precise arcs, low-tech but vicious. The kind of thing that shredded organic hulls and overwhelmed advanced shielding through sheer savage persistence. The Serethi cruiser took 5 hits before it could shield. But it was already too late. In orbit above Verdun 4, the sky lit up with fire. Civilian colonists who had cowered underground now watched as the enemy ships that once ruled their skies fell like meteors, burning, smoking, breaking apart under a human counterstrike no one thought possible. In that moment, they didn't just see hope. They saw revenge. But it wasn't over. The Serethi command ship, the last and largest, hung back, intact, waiting. Riker didn't blink. He didn't mourn. Not yet. There wasn't time. He keyed in emergency life support reroutes and dumped excess fuel to stabilize rotation. The ship was spinning slowly, debris still clinging to the hull like torn flesh. He looked at the wreckage of the bioconstruct. It was out there, floating in pieces. Twisted bone-mechanical limbs slowly turning in space, still dripping strange violet fluid that glowed like antifreeze blood. The core was cracked open now, dead and cold. But something inside it still shimmered. Alive, watching, waiting. Down in the medical bay, the lights flickered as power rerouted. One of the surviving med officers, Colt, leaned over Cardo's body, patching a cauterized wound on her shoulder. Her pulse was stable, but she hadn't woken up since the bridge decompress. She'll live, Colt muttered into the comm. Riker's voice answered back, gravel rough. Good. We'll need her. For what? The fight's over, Captain. Riker glanced out at the construct wreckage. Number it's not. Later, inside the forward hangar, Riker stood before a sealed airlock with 3 surviving Marines, Dredd, Miko, and Harv. They all looked like hell. Dredd had a prosthetic arm that kept glitching. Harv was walking with a makeshift crutch. Miko had half his face wrapped in bloody gauze. But they all had one thing in common. They weren't scared. They were angry. You want to board that? Dredd asked, nodding toward the construct remains. It's dead, Captain. Leave it. It's not dead enough, Riker said. And I don't leave unknown tech floating in orbit over a civilian colony. He held up a data pad. Energy readings are still active inside the core. There's something in there, and we're going to find out what it is. Miko spat. This is suicide. No, Riker said. This is humanity. The boarding skiff was patched together with hull scraps and emergency oxygen packs. No fancy tech, no backdoor uplinks, just a metal coffin with a plasma torch. They launched with a controlled burn, drifting through the wreckage like carrion birds toward a predator's corpse. The closer they got, the less natural the construct looked. From far away, it had seemed like some grotesque machine. Up close, it was worse. Bone, muscle, cable, tendons laced with nanowires, teeth embedded in metal sockets, and all of it humming faintly, like it breathed. Tell me that's not still alive, Harv whispered. Riker didn't answer. He activated the cutting torch and opened the hatch. Inside, the heat was unbearable. Not just temperature, but presence, like something was pressing against their skulls. Feels wrong, Miko muttered. It is wrong, Riker said. Keep moving. The walls pulsed. Not a metaphor. Literally pulsed. Biogel sacs squirmed along the interior, twitching when touched. Symbols coated the walls, etched in patterns that weren't just decorative. They moved. They rearranged themselves when no one was looking. This wasn't made by the Serethi, Dredd said suddenly. Riker turned. What? He pointed at a section of wall. That's Terran alloy, our make, fusion welded. Look, the others moved closer, and there it was, clear as day, an Earth-made dataport panel embedded in the wall. Human technology. What the hell? Harv muttered. Riker's mind reeled. The construct hadn't just been built by the Serethi, it had human parts. They moved deeper, past dead appendages and shattered circuits until they reached the core. Still glowing, weak but active. It wasn't a traditional engine. It was a nervous system. Neurons fired across translucent strands, and in the center, encased in a gel capsule, floated something Riker hadn't seen in years. A brain, human, still alive. Colt's voice crackled through comms. Captain, energy spikes rising. Whatever you're near, it's syncing with your vitals. Riker ignored him. He stepped closer. The brain inside the capsule twitched, and then it spoke, not through words, not through sound, straight into his mind. You are Riker. His heart slammed in his chest. You killed the child. The child? He stumbled back. What are you? We are the architects. You killed one of our prototypes. You killed my daughter. Blood drained from his face. This wasn't alien. This wasn't Serethi. This was worse. They'd thought they were at war with a foreign species, but someone else had been pulling the strings, experimenting, playing both sides, feeding humanity's enemies technology, tech built from them. They were being dissected, recycled, remade, used. The war wasn't just war. It was a harvest, and the Serethi weren't the top of the food chain. Back on the Vindicator, alarms lit up again. Colt ran into the bridge, face pale. Captain, reading 2 new contacts dropping out of FTL. Unknown design. Riker's blood went cold. They come for the remains, the voice whispered in his skull. They come for you. The wreckage wasn't dead. It had been a signal, a marker, a beacon. And now the ones who'd created it were coming, to finish the job. They came without sound, no weapons hot, no comms signals, just 2 vessels, black as oil and shaped like needles, slipped out of FTL space like a whisper through a graveyard. Riker stood on the Vindicator's fractured bridge, half lit by failing power cores, staring at the screen as the unknown ships positioned themselves just beyond strike range. His crew watched too, breathing like ghosts, silent and braced. Every one of them looked like they'd already died, twice. Colt's voice cut through the stillness. They're not Serethi. Structure is wrong. Fluid alloy, folding points. I've never seen ships do this. Cardo had just woken up. She limped to the console, eyes dark. Captain, we shouldn't still be here. I know, Riker said, but he didn't move. Because something had shifted. The war wasn't a war anymore. It was a stage. And the players? They'd just realized the script had been written by someone else. The boarding team had returned to the Vindicator, dragging with them a sealed container that held the floating, semi-living brain of what Riker now knew was human. Or, rather, once human. The thing had grown in some twisted machine-flesh symbiosis that should never have existed. And it had spoken to him. It called itself an architect. And it claimed the construct Riker destroyed, the one that nearly gutted his entire crew, was its daughter. No alien called a weapon daughter, unless it wasn't a weapon, unless it was bred. Status? Riker barked. Cardo, despite the pain in her side, stayed sharp. No shields. Weapons at 23%. Hull stress critical. If they hit us, we're done. They haven't fired. That's what's scaring me. Riker nodded once and keyed the internal comms. All hands. Secure remaining sectors. Prep for possible boarding. I want sabotage options ready on the engines. If they try to take this ship, we leave them nothing. He turned to Colt. Scan those ships. Find me a weakness. Colt hesitated. What if they don't have one? Riker stared at the unknown vessels, which still hovered in absolute silence. Then we give them ours. One bullet at a time. Suddenly, the screen flared. A light, not bright but invasive, shot from the tip of one of the vessels, projecting a thin beam into the wreckage of the biomechanoid construct still drifting nearby. It wasn't an attack. It was communication. The remaining fragments of the creature began to vibrate. "We're getting cross-link signals," Colt shouted. "They're syncing something, biofeedback, like a neural handshake." Riker didn't wait. He rushed out of the bridge, stormed through the buckled halls until he reached the medbay. Inside the container, the architect brain was twitching. Its fluid pulsed. Monitors screamed. And then it spoke again, this time not through thought. It used Riker's own voice. "You killed her. You broke the threshold. Now they come to decide." Riker leaned close. "Decide what?" The thing smiled. Not physically. Its nerves twitched, its mind rippled. He felt it smile. "Whether your species is salvageable or scrap." Back on the bridge, the unknown ships moved again. One of them opened, not like a hatch, more like peeling. The hull separated like skin, revealing a pulsating interior chamber that emitted no heat, no radiation, just a low, bone-deep vibration. And something stepped out. It wasn't a Cerethi. It wasn't even humanoid. It had no clear shape, only suggestion, like a reflection in shattered glass. Even the ship's cameras couldn't fully resolve it. It hurt to look at. The screen bled static where it stood. Cardo recoiled. "What the hell is that?" Colt whispered. "That's not a soldier." Riker stepped closer to the screen. That's a judge." The thing drifted across open space toward the wreckage of its fallen construct. As it floated closer, the fragments of the dead bio-beast began to rise and orbit around it, like planets pulled by gravity. Riker knew what it was doing. It wasn't mourning. It was collecting. Then it turned toward the Vindicator. No weapons, no posture, just a slow, deliberate drift. Coming closer. "Captain," Cardo said, fingers trembling on the console. "It's not charging weapons, but I don't think it needs to." "Lock the torpedoes," Riker said. "They won't work, not on that thing." "Doesn't matter. Lock them." He walked to the comms station and did something he hadn't done in years. He opened a broad-spectrum, unencrypted, old-school channel, not digital, audible. He leaned into the mic. "This is Captain Trent Riker of the Vindicator. You have entered human engagement space. You have taken part in hostile biological development, unauthorized warfare, and the slaughter of civilian colonies. State your identity." No answer. Of course not. But that was fine. Because Riker hadn't finished talking. "You built them using our tissue. You planted their tech inside our enemies. You watched us burn, and now you want to decide what we're worth?" He stepped back from the mic, straightened his collar, and stared directly into the lens. "Let me save you the trouble." He flipped the switch on the internal feed, now transmitting a direct feed of the ship's bridge to every open frequency. Human, Cerethi, architect. Didn't matter who saw, because now Riker wasn't just speaking to them. He was speaking for Earth. "We're not specimens. We're not salvage. We are the storm. You want to judge us? Come down and bleed with us." He slammed his fist on the deck. "Because if we go out, we're taking every one of you with us." Silence followed. And then, slowly the being floating outside began to change. Its form solidified, shifted. For the first time, it mimicked human shape. A mockery, a mirror. It took on his form, Riker's, down to the uniform, the scars. It stared at them and smiled. Then let it begin. Everything changed in an instant. The architect ships blinked out of visible light, vanished, but they didn't leave. The Vindicator shook. Inside every system, code rewrote itself. Lights burst, panels cracked. The beast AI screamed a warning. Infiltration detected. Hostile code. Hostile. Then it went dark. The Vindicator was being hacked from reality itself. Colt shouted, "They're inside the ship's brain." "Cut power to the core," Riker barked. "It won't help. They're not using signals. They're bending physics." Riker grabbed a cable from the emergency panel and ripped it out. Manual override. If the ship was going down, he'd take control the old-fashioned way, with blood, with guts, with hate. The lights returned, diamond soys flickering. But the beast came back online, fractured, angry. "They touched me." Its voice was broken, disjointed. "I remember their code. It's ours. It's Earth." Riker froze. "What?" "They built me." The bridge went dead silent, and Riker realized the truth. The beast, the very thing that had saved them, wasn't built by Earth's engineers. It was architect tech, repackaged, resold, modified. No wonder the Vindicator fought like a monster. It was won. "Captain," Cardo said slowly, "this whole ship was a test." "No," Riker said. "It's a trap." Far below the bridge, deep in the ship's databanks, something unlocked. A message. Old. Not a log. Not a record. An instruction. From someone with a voice almost human. "If this ship survives exposure to architect hostility, initiate Protocol Omega." "Download begins now." Colt's eyes widened. "Sir, we're getting a full data stream, thousands of files. This isn't ship data. It's intelligence, records, logs, project names, people." Riker stared at the feed, and his blood ran cold, because stamped on the first file was the symbol of the United Terran Council, and below it, Project Vindicator. The bridge lights dimmed again, this time not from damage, but from deliberate system lockdown. Everything paused. No weapons fire, no chasing shadows, just the quiet hum of a ship learning how to speak the truth. The files were downloading slowly, piece by piece, as though they didn't want to be found, like they'd been buried under layers of guilt and denial for years. Riker stood still, eyes glued to the main console where the first document bled onto the screen. Project Vindicator, Alpha Clearance, 2142X. Status, Experimental Deployment Phase. Primary Objective, Artificial Conflict Stress Simulation. Secondary Objective, Genetic Compatibility Mapping. Subject Class, Homo sapiens. Funding Authority, United Terran Council Directorate Shadow Wing. Colt leaned over the terminal, jaw clenched. "What the hell is this?" Cardo's face had gone pale. "Read that line again." Colt did. Artificial conflict. Stress simulation. Riker's voice came out like gravel grinding against steel. "We weren't supposed to win." The beast AI, still partially corrupted, croaked through a fractured speaker. "Data confirms. Simulations designed to test resilience under manipulated warfare. Falsified enemy intelligence. Modified Serethi biology. Injections of architect code." Cardo turned, anger rising behind her shock. "The Alliance knew? Our own people planted architect systems in the Serethi?" Colt snapped. "They engineered the enemy. Built them into something worse, just to watch us fight them. Measure our breaking point." Riker stared at the glowing file. His war, his ship, his entire career had been spent bleeding for a fight that wasn't clean, wasn't even real, and now he understood the architects hadn't started this war. Humans did. More files streamed in. Operation Threshold initiated 2119. Objective: controlled contact with non-organic intelligence for the purpose of adaptive military integration. Status: partial success. Architect sample recovered. Subject C-001 bonded with human neural framework. Result: hybrid AI intelligence. Codename BEAST. Riker stepped back from the console, eyes wide. They didn't just reverse engineer architect tech. Colt finished the thought. They merged with it. He pointed to a highlighted section. C001, human donor classified. Subject exhibited extreme cognitive durability. Neurosync exceeded all thresholds. Ethical failure noted but waived under wartime protocol. Donor, Riker muttered. That AI we've been trusting, it's someone. Someone they plugged in like a damn engine, Cardo whispered. The weight hit like gravity, crushing the room. Riker had always known there were things the brass didn't tell frontline units. He knew they made sacrifices. He even accepted some of it. But this was betrayal at the molecular level. They had sacrificed humanity's soul in the name of its survival. Another alert pinged. New incoming signal, Colt said. It's local, from inside our system. Cardo raised a brow. Another architect? Number it's from Earth. The message was encrypted with top-tier clearance codes, but Riker had long since taught himself how to bypass protocol. A voice played, familiar, cold. Admiral Vaughn. Captain Riker, if you're receiving this, then I'll assume the Vindicator performed above expectations. You've survived contact with Class A architect hostility and maintained command integrity. Commendable. But it ends here. You are hereby ordered to stand down and await retrieval. You are not to transmit any recovered data. Your crew will be debriefed under Article Black. Failure to comply will result in immediate orbital sanitization. Riker didn't move. He just let the words burn into the back of his skull. Orbital sanitization. The Alliance was going to nuke them from orbit to bury the truth. They were cleaning house. Colt's eyes darted between the others. They're going to kill us, Cardo whispered. No survivors. No witnesses. Riker's jaw clenched so hard it creaked. Then he looked up. Patch me through to that channel. No encryption. Captain, you heard me. The comm system hummed. Riker stood tall. This is Captain Trent Riker of the Vindicator. I received your message, Admiral. A pause. Then Vaughn's voice returned, this time live. You're not cleared to broadcast, Riker. Shut this down. Riker's lip curled. Funny thing about clearance, Admiral. Doesn't mean a damn thing when your own AI tells me you built this whole mess. Silence on the line. Riker stepped closer to the mic. You used us. Used the Serethi. Used our dead. Also, you could measure how far you could push humanity before it snapped. Careful, Captain. Or what? You'll kill the one crew who figured it out? Go ahead. Drop the bomb. But know this. Our transmission's already piggybacking on the architect signal. You scrub us. Every satellite from here to Proxima gets the full download. You don't understand what's at stake, Riker. I understand exactly. You're not protecting humanity. You're protecting the experiment. Colt looked up from his station. They cut comms. Cardo stared into the void outside. Which means they're preparing to launch. Riker turned to his crew, what was left of them. Anyone who wants off this ship, now's the time. Take a skiff. Run. I won't stop you. No one moved. Briggs limped into the room, face bruised and burnt, but his eyes still bright with fire. Captain, where are we going? Riker cracked his neck. The fire was back in his gut. The hate. The purpose. We're going to make damn sure that if they erase us, we scar the sky doing it. And then, something happened no one expected. The architect judge reappeared. It didn't attack. It just hovered there, staring at the Vindicator. Then, with a flicker of motion, it transmitted a single packet of data, encrypted, but open. Colt received it first. Sir, they just gave us something. Riker frowned. What? Coordinates. Deep space. Beyond mapped territories. Cardo asked. A trap? Riker shook his head. Number A choice. That's when it hit him. The architects weren't just here to judge. They were watching what humanity would do with the truth. Would they bury it, or would they burn for it? Riker looked out across the ruined bridge of the Vindicator, at the half-dead ship, the broken crew, the ghost of a voice inside its AI that still whispered with human pain. Then he looked at those coordinates and grinned. Plot a course. Cardo's eyes widened. You're not actually... Yes, I am. Captain, Earth will see that as desertion. No, he said. It's defiance. He sat in the command chair, cracked, smoking, but still his. Set engines to full. If we're going to die, we'll do it on our terms. The Vindicator turned slowly, its burned nose pointed toward the void, toward the edge of the known galaxy, toward whatever waited beyond. The Vindicator tore through the darkness like a wounded animal trying to outrun the butcher. Its hull still bled sparks. Its engines coughed more than they roared. Yet it moved with purpose, fast, angry, and hell-bent on finding the truth that nearly got it destroyed. Riker sat in the command chair, hands wrapped in bandages, fingers tight around the armrests. He hadn't slept. Not properly. Not since Earth sent their kill order. He didn't need rest. He needed answers. Behind him, Colt and Cardo worked silently, their eyes sunken but focused. The crew had become something different now. Not soldiers, not survivors. They were witnesses, and they were heading straight into a place no human had ever willingly gone. The coordinates given by the architect didn't match any star chart. They sat in an unregistered pocket beyond the mapped edge of Orion's outer rim. A void so dark it didn't even have a name, just a numerical designation. Sector V Null. They weren't just leaving known space, they were leaving known reality. Crossing into uncharted gravitational field now, Colt announced. Instruments are already glitching. Cardo frowned. That's not a glitch, that's space. Bending. She wasn't wrong. The view through the main observation panel warped unnaturally. Stars stretched, curved, shimmered with impossible hues. It was like reality had fractured ahead of them, like someone had cracked a window into something older. The beast AI's voice flickered back to life. Approaching designated anomaly. Warning. No predictive physics apply. Riker stood. He didn't want predictions. He wanted the truth. Drop us out of FTL. The ship stuttered, then stopped. The silence that followed felt deeper than anything they'd experienced in war. And outside? It wasn't a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Thousands, maybe tens of thousands of derelict ships drifted ahead, scattered across the void like bones after a slaughter. Not just human. Not just Cerethi. Every shape imaginable. Cylindrical husks, blade-like cruisers, organic shells, some as big as moons, others the size of shuttles. All of them dead. Riker stepped forward, unable to look away. My God! Cardo's breath caught. What is this? Colt checked his scans. No power signatures, no movement, no life. But Riker didn't believe that. Not for a second. This is where they brought them, he whispered. Who? Riker's voice was hollow. The ones who asked too many questions. They eased the Vindicator into the heart of the graveyard, drifting through twisted remnants of lost wars. Some wrecks still held their insignias, long faded crests writing in forgotten languages. Others looked half-melted, as if something had dissolved them from the inside out. And some? Some still had bodies. Riker saw one, a floating corpse locked in a half-broken bridge window. Human, rotting inside a suit that bore a United Terran patch, but the faceplate was shattered from the inside. He said nothing. He just stared into the eyes of a ghost and moved on. Then, The ping. A signal. Software ancient. Barely there. Unknown transmission source, Colt said, adjusting the filters. But it's not noise, it's repeating. Location? Riker asked. Looks like it's coming from the largest wreck, 220 clicks ahead, that massive structure at the center. They turned toward it. The ship was colossal, like a drifting cathedral made of bone and glass. It had no clear propulsion, no obvious weapon ports. It didn't belong to any known civilization. The closer they got, the more unsettling it became. The structure wasn't just metal, it pulsed like it was alive. Riker's chest tightened. We board it. Cardo turned sharply. Captain, we've seen what's in there. That place eats people. We didn't come this far to turn back, Riker said. We came for the truth. We finished this. Colt added, we're down to 20 crew. Half are injured. You know this could be one way. Riker looked out at the thing, whatever it was, floating like a monument to forgotten sins. Then let's make sure it's worth it. They took the last functional shuttle, a scarred black can barely held together by welds and backup fields. 5 volunteers joined Riker: Cardo, Colt, Briggs, Miko, and Harv. No one spoke as they approached the derelict. When they reached the hull, they saw it had no markings, no language, just carvings, deep, jagged grooves that wrapped around it in swirling patterns like fingerprints carved into flesh. The boarding clamp connected. The hatch opened, and they entered something that felt older than time. Inside the construct, it was wrong. The halls were too wide, the walls too smooth, no sharp angles. Everything was curved, grown, not built, and everywhere they went, the lights followed them. Not artificial lights. Number. The walls pulsed as they moved, responding like a creature tracking movement inside its stomach. Riker led them deeper, guided by the faint signal. Eventually, they reached what could only be described as a central chamber. In the center, suspended by a lattice of organic cables, was a core. It looked like a heart the size of a transport shuttle, beating slowly, faint, dying. It pulsed with the same violet hue as the construct he'd fought before. Cardo whispered, "Is that—" Colt answered, "the architect's brain, or something bigger?" Suddenly, a voice, not external, internal. "You are the last." Riker stiffened. "You carry the disease. You came to see where the gods fell." Briggs raised his gun. "Who's talking?" "There were many. Now there are none. We built life. We built enemies. And then we built you." Everyone froze. Riker's voice cracked. "What do you mean, built? You are the consequence, not the creation. Your kind is the result of war gone wrong. You are the mutation we could not control." Colt nearly dropped his scanner. "They didn't just interfere with human evolution. They caused it," Cardo said, stunned. "No," Riker said, rage rising. "They created the war, and we survived it." The core pulsed again. "You were meant to die, but you adapted. You burned. You consumed. Now we ask, will you repeat our mistakes?" Riker stepped closer to the core. "I'm not here to answer for them." "Then destroy us, or become us." He stared at the core. A choice: salvage the architect network, connect to it, absorb the knowledge, the power, or destroy it. He turned to the others. Colt was already shaking his head. "That much knowledge, Captain, we could stop every war before it starts." Cardo, steady but quiet, said, "Or start wars no one could stop." Briggs simply said, "Up to you, sir." Riker looked back at the core. "Decide." He reached into his suit, pulled out the last charge detonator. They'd used these to destroy Serethi hives. One blast could collapse a moon base. He walked toward the core, and he planted it. "No gods. Riker said softly. "No more architects." He turned away as the timer ticked. Back on the Vindicator, the ship braced for impact. The detonation was silent, lightless. The architect construct didn't explode. It folded, collapsed in on itself like it had never existed. And with it, so did the graveyard. Every wrecked ship, every drifting corpse, every whisper of that ancient power, gone, erased. They didn't cheer. No one celebrated. There was no victory, just survival. Riker sat back in his chair, eyes hollow. They'd seen the truth, buried it in the fire, and now they had to live with it. The stars were quiet when the Vindicator emerged from the black. No ambush, no enemy fleet, no architect Leviathan waiting in the dark. Just space, vast, indifferent, and empty. Riker stood on the bridge, face gaunt, his uniform stitched in places with thread and blood. His hands gripped the edge of the command console like a man preparing for a final fall. Behind him, what remained of the crew was silent. 19 in total. Out of 112, the ship's hull still bore the scars from Verdun 4, from the construct, from the architect graveyard. It was a miracle the engines hadn't buckled during re-entry into known space. But it hadn't been luck. It had been rage, and now that rage had carried them to the one place Riker had tried to avoid. Earth. Colt studied the long-range scans. "No fleets yet. No fighter wings inbound. Either they don't know we're back, or they're waiting," Cardo said. Riker nodded. "They know. They always know." He stepped forward and keyed into the Alliance command channel. He didn't mask his identity. "This is Captain Trent Riker of the Vindicator, returning from classified coordinates, bringing hard data and crew testimony regarding Project Vindicator, architect synthesis, and Earth's complicity in the war." He waited. No response, not for 5 minutes. Then, "Acknowledged, Captain. Maintain current trajectory. Prepare for escort." There was no hostility in the voice, but it wasn't friendly either. 6 escort ships met them at Earth's outer orbital gate. Clean, polished cruisers bearing the Terran Eagle in chrome across their sides. Everything about them was pristine. And that made Riker sick. They were symbols, gleaming reminders of a lie scrubbed so clean it blinded the truth. The Vindicator, blackened and broken, drifted behind them like a rotting corpse being marched to its own funeral. They were ordered to dock at Luna Station 4, an isolated debrief facility orbiting the moon. Not Earth, not Command HQ, no media, no press, no eyes. Riker knew what this was. Containment. In the airlock chamber, the crew stood in silence. Suits zipped, guns holstered. No one smiled. No one said goodbye. They weren't splitting up, yet. But they all knew this might be the last time they stood together as them. Riker turned, scanning their faces. Cardo, resolute, grim, Colt, still angry, still burning. Briggs, silent but ready. Every one of them had seen hell and walked out swinging. He gave a single nod. "We go in as one. We come out the same." They nodded back. Then the outer doors opened, and Earth was watching. The debriefing was a war of another kind. Hours of isolation, endless interrogation, sterile rooms, armed guards, faceless officers asking questions they already knew the answers to. Riker gave them everything. The architect files, the beast's corrupted data logs, the recordings, the footage of the bioconstruct's heartbeat, the open-line broadcast where Admiral Vaughn had all but sentenced them to death. They listened, they took notes, and they said nothing. Not a single goddamn thing. 3 days passed before Riker was summoned into a final chamber. It wasn't a courtroom. It was a cage dressed as diplomacy. 7 council members, 1 admiral, a mediator who never introduced herself. Riker didn't sit. He stood at the center of the room with his arms folded and his voice sharp. You fed us lies. You used our dead. You turned the war into a lab experiment. Silence. Then, finally, the Admiral, Wells, not Vaughn, spoke. You defied a direct order, Captain. I exposed treason. You broadcast classified material across multiple networks. You brought potentially hostile technology to Alliance borders. You disobeyed protocol. I did my job, Riker snapped. I protected humanity, something none of you know a damn thing about. Another council member spoke. And how do you define protection, Captain? By destroying a potential evolutionary advancement? The architect data could have rewritten the future. Riker stepped forward, eyes blazing. I didn't destroy the future. I saved it. He tossed a drive onto the table. Everything you needed to know. Everything we brought back. It's yours. Burn it or bury it. I don't care anymore. He turned to leave. Where do you think you're going? Wells asked. Riker paused in the doorway. Back to my ship. You're under review. I know, and you can shove your review up your protocol-riddled... Captain, said the mediator. Her voice was flat, cold. If you walk out now, you may never be reinstated. Your crew will be scattered, their records marked, their families watched. Riker didn't hesitate. Then we'll burn alone. And he left. Back aboard the Vindicator, Riker found Cardo sitting in the engine corridor, watching the reactor pulse dimly. They going to erase us? She asked without turning. Riker leaned on the wall. Maybe. They going to bury the truth? He didn't answer. She smiled. Then we did the right thing. Within a week, half the surviving crew was relocated, scattered across different postings, watched, questioned, but not executed, not silenced, because even the Council knew something had changed. The truth was out there now, and they couldn't stop all of it. Riker stayed aboard the Vindicator. She'd been grounded, decommissioned officially, but no one had the guts to scrap her. Even now, her lights pulsed faintly. Her halls still whispered the beast's voice when the vents hissed at night. The AI was dormant, but not dead. Sometimes, when Riker walked the bridge alone, he could still feel it in the walls, still watching, still waiting. 3 months later, a message came, encrypted, anonymous, no sender, just 3 words. They are coming. And attached? New coordinates, deeper than before, a place beyond Sector Fa Null, a place even the architects hadn't dared mark. Riker stood at the edge of the launch bay, looking out over the stars. He didn't need command, didn't need the Council, didn't even need permission. He only needed one thing, a reason to keep fighting. And now? He had one. Because if someone else was watching Earth, if someone else had been pulling strings behind even the architects, then humanity was still in danger, and the Vindicator still had one last war left in her. He turned, flipped on the intercom, and spoke to the skeleton crew that had returned, those loyal enough, broken enough, angry enough to stay. You all know what this is. Silence. You all know we're not going back to Earth. Still silence, then a voice. Briggs. About time. The engines roared one last time. The ship shuddered, rattled, bled sparks. But it moved. Forward. Into the dark. Toward whatever waited beyond. Because they'd already fought the monsters. Now, they were hunting the ones who made them.